One frosty November morning, I was perched on a ridge deep in the northern British Columbia backcountry, scanning a valley for elk, when I saw something that's kept me from sleeping right ever since. At first, I thought it was a wounded deer, dragging itself through the snow, until I raised my binoculars, and everything changed. I've hunted these woods for years. I know their sounds, their patterns. I've stared down wolves. I've had grizzlies get too close. This land is brutal, but it's familiar. It's real. But what I saw that morning wasn't real. Couldn't be. I'm the type who hunts alone, always have. There's a purity in relying on no one but yourself out here, letting the wilderness strip everything down to instinct. My usual spot lies about 40 miles north of Fort Nelson, buried in the boreal forest where the snow muffles every sound and human footprints vanish fast. That year, winter came early and hard. The kind of cold that punches through layers. I'd set up camp near a frozen creek, tracked a small herd through the snow, and was 4 days into the hunt. My gear was solid, my tent insulated. I thought I was prepared. But nothing prepares you for the unnatural. That morning, I hiked 2 miles from camp to a ridge I'd scoped out the day before. From there, I had a clean view of a clearing below. The sun was just cresting the horizon when I spotted it, movement, subtle but wrong. Something pale and twitching, low to the ground. My gut told me deer, maybe a sick one. I lifted my binoculars. And that's when my blood went cold. What I saw was humanoid. That was the worst part. It wasn't an animal. It had the shape of a man, but its body was completely hairless, the skin almost translucent, pale with a sickly bluish tint. It crawled on all fours, but its movements weren't human. The joints bent wrong, like elbows where knees should be, and every motion seemed half a second off from what the body should be doing. It glided through the snow like it didn't feel the cold at all. I watched, unable to move, as it reached a snowshoe hare corpse lying in the open. And with no hesitation, it started tearing into the frozen flesh. No tools, no clothing, just its bare hands and teeth. At -30 Celsius, that thing was out there naked and unfazed. No visible breath. No shivering. No pain. Just hunger. I stayed there, frozen with the binoculars glued to my face for maybe 15 minutes, until the thing finished and slipped back into the trees. Gone, just like that. I stumbled back to camp, thoughts racing. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Some crazed man, deranged, maybe suffering from exposure or a psychotic break. But that movement, those joints, that cold. No. That wasn't human. Still, I stayed. My time off was rare, and part of me clung to the idea that I could just write it off. A freak encounter. Not my problem. But that night, I barely slept. Every branch crack made me jump. My rifle stayed loaded, within arm's reach. The next day, I didn't stray far. I tried to focus on the hunt, and by some stroke of luck, managed to take down a young elk not far from camp. Field dressing took longer than I liked, and dusk settled in fast. When I got back to camp, everything looked normal, until I saw the tent. The flap was open. I knew I'd zipped it shut that morning. I raised my rifle and called out, thinking maybe another hunter had stumbled in. But no one answered. And then it emerged. Crawling headfirst out of my tent, slow and deliberate, was that thing. The pale creature. The same one from the valley. Only now, I was close enough to see its face. It was almost human, but twisted. The kind of face you'd get if someone tried to sculpt a person from memory, and got everything slightly wrong. Its eyes reflected the dying light, like a predator's, and when they locked with mine, we both knew. It recognized me. I recognized it. It wasn't just an animal. It was something older. Something wrong. Its mouth opened. I saw jagged, sharp teeth. I didn't think, I just fired. The blast echoed through the trees. It flinched, staggered back a bit, but it didn't run. It just watched. And I stood there, rifle trembling, trying to figure out if I had just shot at a hallucination, or if it was deciding whether or not to come at me. It didn't charge. Didn't snarl. Instead, It just stared, long and deep, like it was trying to memorize me. Like it wanted me to understand something. Then, slowly, it began crawling backward, those limbs bending the wrong way again, retreating with that same spider-like fluidity that made my skin crawl. Within seconds, it slipped beneath the underbrush and vanished into the forest like it had never been there at all. I didn't wait. I sprinted to my tent, heart jackhammering against my ribs, convinced it had ransacked everything. But weirdly, nothing was taken. Everything was exactly how I'd left it. Except for my sleeping bag. It had been unzipped and laid open, like someone had prepared it for a night's rest. Or something. And that's when my breath caught in my throat. How did it know to do that? How did it know what a sleeping bag was, or how to open it? That's not something a wild animal does. That's not instinct. That's understanding. That's planning. I tore through the tent, shoving gear into my pack. Left behind everything I didn't absolutely need. I couldn't afford hesitation. Not anymore. I hiked through the night, headlamp blazing, the full moon lighting the snow like a stage. Every time fatigue started to set in, I'd see its face again, those reflective eyes, that crooked mouth, and adrenaline would kick in like jet fuel. I didn't stop once. Since that night, I've tried, really tried, to explain it all away. Maybe it was a man, suffering from some extreme condition, deranged and somehow immune to the cold. Maybe it was all in my head. But even as I say that, I know it wasn't. That thing was real. And it wasn't human. I've read about cryptids and native legends tied to this region. Skinwalkers, Wendigos, the Kushtaka. But none of them match what I saw. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't from any story I know. It was something else. Something that shouldn't be here. A year later, I found myself in a different kind of wild. Not northern British Columbia, but the marshes of eastern Iowa, where the land hums with ducks and cattails and the splash of water under rubber waders. It's where we go, my two boys and I, every fall like clockwork. And last season, we saw something we still can't explain. Not fully. My sons are grown now. 32 and 29. Families of their own, careers, busy lives, but we always make time in October to hunt together. Just us three and Duke, our old chocolate lab, who still thinks he's 3 years old the second we pull out the shotguns. We hit our usual spot last season, tucked against state forest land, not far from Cedar Rapids. I won't name the lake for privacy's sake, but we've hunted there for decades. Rarely see another soul. The kind of place you earn, not stumble upon. That morning was perfect. Clear skies, crisp air, and water like glass. We were in place by 5:30 a.m., nestled into the reeds with decoys spread wide. Duke was practically vibrating with excitement at my older boy's side, tail thumping, nose twitching. By 7, we had ducks circling, mallards, moving in textbook V formation from the north. We readied our guns, anticipating that perfect moment when they drop into range. But instead of descending like they always do, the entire flock, about 15 birds, just plummeted. No glide. No controlled landing. It was like someone had grabbed them midair and yanked them straight down. They splashed hard into the lake, about 60 yards out. Then nothing. They didn't scatter. Didn't fly off. Just floated there. What the heck was that? My younger son asked, scanning the water. I wanted to answer, but I didn't know. Not really. I mumbled something about maybe they'd spotted us, but I'd been duck hunting for 30 years. I'd never seen birds behave like that. The ducks didn't move. Not toward shore. Not away. They sat still, heads jerking side to side like they were watching something we couldn't see. I tried calling. Nothing. Just soft quacking and slow paddling in small, tight circles. We sent Duke out, figuring a splash from him would stir them up. He swam hard toward them, but even when he got within feet, they didn't fly. They just kept paddling, like they were terrified of the sky. Terror, I said out loud. Because that's what it was. Not laziness. Not confusion. These ducks looked petrified. Whatever had dropped them like that, they were still scared of it. To them, even a dog in the water was safer than going airborne again. My younger boy stood up, waving, shouting, "Nothing." Not one took off. Then we heard it. A sound that didn't belong in any marsh. It started as a hawk's cry, shrill, sharp, but then it kept rising, the pitch climbing higher and higher until it felt like it pierced my eardrums. It wasn't just loud, it was wrong. Like metal tearing, like feedback, like something broken trying to scream. Duke turned mid-swim and bolted back toward us, whimpering, ears flat. "What is that?" my younger son whispered. The fear in his voice cut deeper than the sound. And then the screech came again, this time closer, behind us, from the woods. We turned. And a shadow passed overhead. Something massive moved above the tree line, too big to be a hawk, too slow for a jet. My brain fumbled for answers. Maybe it was a plane, a low-flying aircraft gone off course from Cedar Rapids? But planes don't have wings that flap. When it broke through the tops of the pines, soaring low over the marsh, my knees nearly buckled. This was no plane. It was alive. And it was enormous. It had the wingspan of a regional airliner, 70 feet at least. Its body was long, serpentine, draped in rough scales or maybe leathery hide that shimmered in the early morning sun. It caught the light like polished stone, casting shadows as wide as boats across the water. The head was all wrong. Not bird-like. More like a crocodile's, elongated, narrow, and crowned with a line of jagged spines that ran down its neck and along its back. Its wings pumped like sails in a storm, long and thick, with leathery skin stretched taut between finger-like joints. And that tail, it trailed behind like a whip, slicing the air to keep its monstrous body balanced. It wasn't flying high either. Maybe twice the height of the tallest pines. Close enough that I saw the glint of light in its eyes. Reptilian eyes. Cold, intelligent, watching. Before I knew what I was doing, I shouted, "Run!" It wasn't logic. It wasn't strategy. It was instinct, primal, old, the kind that makes your body move before your mind catches up. Where could we run? The thing could have followed us anywhere. But we ran anyway. Duke bolted first, splashing through the marsh toward the truck, his ears pinned back in sheer panic. We followed, shotguns clutched like life vests, boots sucking at the muck with every step. I swear, I've never run so hard in my life, not in boot camp, not in my worst firefights. Nothing matched the fear this thing put in me. As we ran, the creature let out another screech, ear-splitting, high-pitched, like a metal banshee. The sound hit us like a wave. I saw the surface of the water ripple from the force of it. It felt like the air itself was about to split open. But the thing didn't dive. Didn't circle back. It just kept flying, east, following the treetops, disappearing into the morning haze. We reached the truck, threw the doors open, and piled inside, Duke still soaked, trembling in the back seat. The cab filled with the sound of our breath, the kind of breathing you do when your life almost ends. Finally, my oldest broke the silence. "Did we all see that?" I just looked at him. My younger one answered, his voice trembling. "That was a freaking dinosaur. Like a goddamn pterodactyl." I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Because he wasn't wrong. It looked straight out of Jurassic Park, something ancient, something extinct, something that had no business flying over eastern Iowa. After a long debate, we worked up the nerve to head back and grab our gear. The ducks were gone by then, vanished. And everything else? Quiet. Peaceful. Like nothing had ever happened. But that was our spot. Had been for years. We never went back. Now we hunt different places. And we're a little quicker to nod at other hunters when we see them, less territorial, more communal. Being alone in the marsh just doesn't feel the same anymore. That silence we used to love? Now it feels exposed. Hunting's still part of my life. These days, it's mostly deer. That's more than enough. And honestly, I prefer the quiet. I've done 2 tours in Afghanistan, seen what man can do. I came home to the trees for peace. But peace doesn't always mean safety. My hunting partner, we'll call him M, served with me in the same Marine unit. We bonded over New England roots and kept in touch after discharge. Hunting was our therapy. Our escape. Each year, we'd take a week off. No phones, no wives, no noise. Just rifles, bourbon, and the silence of the woods. One November, we set up camp near Glastonbury Mountain. Good hunting country, but steeped in folklore too, strange disappearances, unsettling sounds, eerie backwoods tales that the locals would whisper over cheap beers. We laughed it off. We were Marines, after all. Ghost stories didn't scare us. We'd seen real horror. Midway through the trip, the weather turned. The kind of sharp cold that wasn't in the forecast. Light snow blanketed the woods overnight, which made for easier tracking but tougher kills. That morning, Em and I split up. The plan was to meet back near camp by early afternoon. I moved slow, scanning for fresh sign in a stand of maples, when something flickered in the distance, movement, about 80 yards out. I raised my rifle, expecting antlers in the scope. But what I saw instead froze me in place. A body. Human. Hanging from a tree. I lowered the rifle immediately and moved in, boots crunching over frost. The closer I got, the more my stomach turned. It was definitely a man, hanging by a rope from a thick branch of an old oak. He swayed lightly in the cold breeze. The body looked like it had been there a long time. Weeks, maybe months. The clothes were tattered, barely clinging to the frame. The face wasn't a face anymore. Weathered, chewed, decayed. Something had been feeding on him. I keyed the walkie. I need you at my position. Now. His response was instant. Something wrong? Where are you? About a half-mile northeast of the split, I said, never taking my eyes off the hanging figure swaying in that dead silence. There's a body out here. I gave him the rest of the directions, though I was barely registering my own words. Something about the whole scene felt off, not just tragic or eerie, but unnatural. Sure, a corpse in the woods is always disturbing. But the absence of birds? No flies? Not even a squirrel chittering from a branch? It was silent. The kind of silence that makes your teeth hurt. 10 minutes later, S came jogging through the trees, breath puffing in the cold. He slowed when he saw the figure. Jesus Christ. He muttered, voice low. Marine instincts kicked in immediately. We need to call this in. I nodded, already fumbling with my phone. Miraculously, I had one bar of service. As I pressed 911, I felt them grip my arm. Wait. Look. I glanced up. The rope was still there, swaying gently in the breeze. But the body? Gone. I blinked hard. Did you? Yeah, S said, his voice hollow. It's gone. I stepped forward, scanning the ground beneath the tree, half expecting to find a crumpled body sprawled on the snow-dusted leaves. But there was nothing. No drag marks. No footprints. Just an empty noose swaying softly like something had been there. Before the 911 operator picked up, I hung up. I couldn't explain what I'd seen. We'd seen. We stared for another long moment, the rope creaking quietly like a metronome to some twisted rhythm. Then the scream came. It pierced the woods like a knife, high-pitched, distinctly female, and not far off. S and I both froze. Another scream answered from the opposite direction. Then one behind us. Then everywhere. The forest exploded with them. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of female voices, shrieking in every direction all at once. Move! S shouted. And we did. We ran. The way those screams echoed, layered over each other like waves, it was unbearable. The sound burrowed into your skull, made your lungs seize up. It reminded me of Afghanistan, after an IED went off. The way people scream when they've been blown open and don't know it yet. Only these voices were different. Wrong. They didn't cry out for help, they screamed at us. We tore through the brush, dodging branches, stumbling over roots. My rifle slapped against my back with every step, but I didn't dare drop it. Useless or not, it felt like the only solid thing in a world that had come completely unhinged. The screaming never stopped, just grew louder, pressing in like the woods themselves were screaming. But then, we broke through the trees. Our boots hit the edge of the open field that bordered the forest road. And at that exact moment, the noise stopped. Not faded. Not tapered off. Just stopped. We skidded to a halt, panting, hearts hammering in our ears. Em turned toward me, eyes wide and wild. We both turned to face the forest. Nothing. It looked normal. Peaceful. Cold wind brushing through the November trees. Birds chirping. Not a trace of the nightmare we just run from. Screw this. S muttered. I didn't argue. We packed camp in record time, barely speaking, and drove 3 hours back to town in silence at first, then breaking into frantic, overlapping theories. Mass hallucination. A sound phenomenon. Maybe, something we weren't supposed to find. We settled uneasily on hallucination. We had to. Because the alternative? That's something supernatural plays with people out there? That's a little too real for two old Marines. We've gone back to Glastonbury since. But we don't laugh about the local legends anymore. We stay in pairs. We don't stay out after dark. And we never ignore the silence. Now let me take you back a few decades. 1997, late June, Ouachita Mountains. My wife and I had been hunting those hills since before we got married. And that morning, we were 15 feet up a tree, sweating like pigs and waiting for deer. Instead, I saw something that made me nearly drop my thermos. It was blistering hot that year. The kind of sticky Arkansas heat that clings to your skin like wet rags. We'd seen deer on our property earlier in the week, and figured Saturday morning would be a good time to park ourselves in a tree stand about 2 miles deep into the national forest. By 10 a.m., the woods were nearly dead. Not a breeze. Not a deer. Just the occasional bird call and Rachel half dozing against the tree trunk beside me. That's when I saw it. Something moving, crouched low, at the base of a pine tree maybe 30 yards out. At first I thought it was a raccoon, or maybe a black bear cub. But then it stood up. And it wasn't a bear. Not even close. At first I thought it was a bear cub, a rare and beautiful sight, until the realization hit me like a gut punch. If it was a cub, Mama couldn't be far. I nudged Rachel awake, slow and deliberate, and pressed a finger to my lips before pointing toward the base of a nearby pine. The creature crouched there, maybe 3 feet tall. At first glance, sure, it could pass for a bear, until you really looked at it. It stood upright. Not just momentarily, balanced like it was made to move that way. Its arms were too long, fingers too nimble, and its build was off. The head sat low on its shoulders, no real neck to speak of, and its body was covered in a coat of brown hair, not shaggy like a bear's, but smoother, almost like bristled fur. The face, which I could only catch in profile, had shorter hair, and it was concentrating. Peeling strips of bark from the pine, one by one, and discarding them carefully onto the ground like it was searching for something. Rachel leaned in and whispered, "Hun, what in God's name is that?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. We just sat there, frozen, watching this thing behave with precision and purpose. Its hands moved like a primate's, delicate and curious. Reminded me of chimps I'd seen in a nature doc once. But this wasn't a chimp, and it sure as hell wasn't native to Arkansas. Occasionally it paused to glance around, eyes sweeping the underbrush, but it never looked up. Never saw us. Minutes passed. We didn't speak. Didn't move. I had my rifle across my lap, but using it didn't even occur to me. We were mesmerized. We were watching something impossible. Then Rachel finally said what we'd both been thinking. "It looks like a young Sasquatch." And that's when it became real. I'd heard the stories, of course. We all had. Hunters in these parts swapped tales like chewing tobacco. Strange tracks. Echoing howls in the night. A cousin's friend's uncle who saw something big near Broken Bow. Fun stories. Campfire talk. But this wasn't a story. Right in front of us, this little creature flipped a strip of bark and found a beetle underneath. It held the tiny thing in its palm, watching it crawl with almost childlike fascination. Then, from somewhere deep in the woods came the sound. A call. Deep and low, rising into a bellow that shook the leaves. It didn't just echo, it reverberated. It was powerful. Made my ribs buzz in my chest. The creature snapped upright like it had been yanked by an invisible string. Its head turned toward the sound. And then it replied, a high-pitched chitter that cracked across the clearing like a bird call. Then it bolted. On 2 legs. Full sprint. Faster than I've ever seen something that small move. It disappeared into the underbrush in seconds, gone without a trace. Rachel and I just sat there. Me? I was grinning like a madman. She reached over, gripped my hand tight. We should probably go, just in case. And she was right. Just like with bear cubs, you don't want to be standing between a baby and its mama, especially when mama could be a 1,000-pound cryptid built like a linebacker. We packed up fast. On the walk back, we kept talking it through, and by the time we made it to the trailhead, we both agreed, no jokes, no sarcasm, we had just seen a baby Bigfoot. And its mama? Probably just called it in for breakfast. The first time I saw a chupacabra, I was 12 years old. It was the dry season of 1992, up in the mountains outside of Monterey, and it changed me forever. My father took me on my first real hunt that year, javelina. It was a rite of passage. The terrain near the eastern edge of the Sierra Madre was rugged, full of shadows and secrets. Dry earth cracked beneath every step. We brought Lobo. He was our dog, but more than that, he was family. A black and tan shepherd mix, smart as they come, with instincts sharper than any man's. He'd been by my side since I was 7. No way we were going hunting without him. That first night, we set up camp near a rocky outcrop that overlooked a watering hole. Tonight, my father said, resting a hand on my shoulder, you become a hunter. The pride in his voice stuck with me. We didn't use blinds or stands. Just patience, elevation, and silence. When dusk came, the light faded fast, and we hunkered down, rifles ready. Then Lobo growled. Not his usual low warning. This was different. Low and off. He bristled, ears pinned forward, eyes locked across the watering hole. Quiet, my father whispered. But Lobo wouldn't stop. I could feel it too. Something was wrong. The air had changed, tightened, like we were underwater. My father scanned the brush. I don't know what it is, he said, almost to himself. Then Lobo bolted. No bark. No hesitation. Lobo, no! I yelled, scrambling after him. But he was already gone, swallowed by the dark. As I rose to chase after Lobo, my father's hand clamped around my arm like a vice. No, he said, his voice low but sharp. Stay here. I froze. He reached for the flashlight, but before he even flicked it on, we heard it, something I wish I could forget. Lobo's barking turned frantic, panicked. Then another sound cut through the night, a noise that didn't belong in this world. It was a growl, but warped, high-pitched like a hiss, yet deep enough to rattle in your chest. It had this rattling quality, like a death rattle mixed with a scream. Then came Lobo's yelp, sharp and full of pain. My father switched on the light and swept it across the watering hole. For one terrible moment, the beam caught on something. It was hunched over Lobo. The creature had its back to us, but even at that distance, I knew it wasn't right. Its skin glistened a sickly gray-green, stretched tight across a wiry frame. The spine jutted out like a row of knives, and down the back ran quills, long, needle-like spines that flexed as it moved. Not fur. Not hair. Weapons. The creature turned its head toward the light. And I saw its eyes. Massive and round, glowing faintly like wet marbles. I didn't see a mouth, but I could feel its stare. I could feel the cold behind those eyes, like whatever was inside it wasn't just wild. It was wrong. Lobo lay limp beneath it. His coat, once a bright tan, was dark with blood. My chest collapsed in on itself. My father dropped the flashlight, cursing, fumbling for his rifle. Run! he roared. But I couldn't move. He had to grab me by the collar and drag me backward. Only then did my legs remember how to work. I ran harder than I ever had in my life. Blind in the dark, fueled by terror and grief. Back at the truck, my father shoved me into the passenger seat. I kept asking him, begging him, what was that thing? He didn't answer. Not until I asked the fourth time. Then, in a whisper, Chupacabra. I'd heard the stories. Every kid in our village had. But they were bedtime tales, the kind of thing old folks used to keep kids from wandering off into the hills. But it wasn't a story anymore. Not for us. I begged him to go back for Lobo, but he shook his head, jaw tight. Lobo's gone. There won't be anything left. Unless you want to end up like him. When we got home, he told my mother we'd lost the dog to a cougar. That was the end of it. He never said another word about it for the rest of his life. But when villagers began finding goats, and chickens drained of blood over the following months, he'd always find a reason to leave the room. It's been decades now. I've had other dogs, but never another like Lobo. And I've never taken one hunting again. Something about seeing him like that, helpless beneath that thing, just broke something inside me. I still hunt. But never past sunset. And I never go near a watering hole. Because I know what I saw. And I know what took him wasn't any damn cougar. Sinclair, Kentucky. My family's land stretches across the hills near the West Virginia border. Thick forest, old trails, deep ravines, all of it steeped in a history older than most people around here realize. I've hunted these woods all my life. My dad taught me everything he knew, passed down from his father and his father before him. Tracking, waiting, reading the wind, respecting the land. And the land, my dad used to say, has secrets. Ancient ones. I didn't believe in the old stories. Thought they were just folklore, pretty lies to scare kids or keep them respectful. But during last year's deer season, I stopped laughing. That morning was bitter cold for late October. The leaves had mostly fallen, coating the forest floor in a crunchy carpet of gold and rust. I made my way to my favorite tree stand, the one with the old rope ladder and a good line of sight on a trail cutting through the underbrush. Got up there just before sunrise, nestled in, rifle in hand, one my granddad left me before he passed. Normally, the woods settle around you like a blanket. You listen. Breathe. Feel the rhythms of the land waking up. But not that day. The first hour or two were normal, some birds, a squirrel or two bouncing through the leaves. Then silence. The kind that makes you feel like you've gone deaf. No birds. No rustle of wind. Even the far-off hum of the county highway was gone. Just nothing. And I started to shiver, not from cold. Something felt wrong. Like the woods were holding their breath. At first, I figured it was just a bobcat, maybe a coyote moving through, spooking the woods into silence. Happens sometimes. But then came the sound. And that sound, I'll never forget it. It wasn't an animal. Not even close. It echoed out from the trees, metallic, hollow, like someone had struck a massive rusted bell. Faint, far off, but so sharp it sliced through the stillness. It didn't belong. There's nothing like that out here. No abandoned churches. No old mining equipment. No reason for that sound to exist. But it did. Curiosity got the better of me. Against every ounce of better judgment, I climbed down from my stand and crept toward the sound, each step careful, branches brushing against my camo jacket as I pushed through the undergrowth. A minute later, clang, the sound rang out again. Closer. Clearer. This time it came in a rhythm, one metallic tone answered by another, like a call and response. Deliberate. And that's when I realized where I was headed. The ravine. The one my granddad had always warned me to stay away from. The one he said, doesn't like to be seen. I reached the edge and froze. Down in the gully, half covered in moss and decades of forest debris, was something wrong. Metal. A massive, rusted circle, part wheel, part hatch, maybe 10 feet across. Buried deep in the earth like it had been waiting. It looked ancient, industrial, but fresh dirt surrounded it, like it had been disturbed recently. Like something had come out. Another metallic clang rang out, directly beneath my feet. I felt the vibration through the ground. And then, the clicking. It wasn't natural. It wasn't just mechanical. It sounded like something trying to imitate a machine, an awful blend of gears and breath, like a clock trying to breathe. I dropped behind a tree, heart pounding, and watched as something began to emerge from the hatch. I expected a person. A survivalist. Some old hermit maybe. What came out wasn't human. Its body was plated, insect-like, its surface glinting slightly as it twitched into view. The limbs ended in claws, not hands, and its movements were jerky, unsure, like it was adjusting to air or gravity. Its head was small, smooth, and featureless, with no eyes or mouth that I could see. It tilted toward the trees, toward me, and froze. Could it sense me? My lungs locked up. I didn't move. I didn't blink. My hands were slick with sweat. After a few moments, it began to retreat, limbs clicking as it backed toward the hatch. The noise grew softer until it vanished below ground. And I ran. I didn't care about stealth anymore. I tore through the woods like I was being chased, heart hammering in my throat, until I crashed through the back door of the house and collapsed in the kitchen. My dad took one look at me and knew something had happened. He didn't laugh. He didn't doubt. Instead, he said something that chilled me worse than the cold. I saw lights in that ravine too, back when I was your age. But I didn't get close. My daddy always said there's something buried beneath us, something that was never meant to wake up. A week later, I brought a buddy out with me, convinced him with enough retellings that he had to see it. But when we reached the spot, everything was different. No hatch. No disturbed dirt. The trees were wrong, like the land had reshuffled itself overnight. I've never found that place again. But I know what I saw. And these days, when folks whisper about lights in the trees or hunters going missing, I don't roll my eyes. I listen. And now let me take you north, to the dense, twisted woods of Michigan. A place where people vanish like leaves in the wind. Where something moves through the trees wearing the face of someone lost. 2 years ago. Rifle season. A November afternoon heavy with snow in the air, the sky the color of steel. My cousin Travis and I were posted in separate tree stands, maybe a half-mile apart, watching for deer. We'd hunted that land since we were kids. Knew it by heart. Our family never took risks out here. We stuck to the trails, we checked in by radio. Too many stories of people going missing without a trace. That afternoon, I saw movement through the trees, across the clearing, about a football field away. At first, I thought it was another hunter. But we were the only ones with permission to be here. I raised my scope. And saw her. A young woman, maybe in her 20s, wearing a bright red jacket. The kind of color you wear to be seen during hunting season. But something was off. She was stumbling. Sluggish. Like she wasn't fully awake. Her head lolled forward. Her arms hung too loose at her sides. Like she was walking in a dream. At first, I figured she was just lost. Maybe injured. I felt a stab of worry. This was deep woods, and if she'd wandered too far off, she could get into real trouble fast. I climbed down from my stand and began moving toward her, quiet, cautious, calling out in a low voice to keep from spooking her. But when I got to where she'd been, gone. No woman. No motion. Nothing but trees. More confusing than that, I couldn't find a single sign she'd even been there. No footprints. No broken branches. No trail of crushed leaves. The ground was undisturbed, like the forest had just swallowed her. I circled around for a while, trying to rationalize it. Maybe she moved faster than I expected. Maybe I just lost sight of her. Eventually, I climbed back into my stand, unsettled but trying to let it go. About 20 minutes later, I saw her again. Different direction this time, opposite side of the clearing, weaving through the trees with that same slow, dazed walk. I stood up and called out, louder now. "Hey! Stop! I'm coming to help. No response. By the time I made it over there, once again, nothing. She was gone. It wasn't just strange anymore. It was wrong. There was a hollow feeling in my chest that I couldn't explain. A sense of being watched. Of something not fitting. That night, I told my older brother what I'd seen. He just shrugged. Probably campers, he said. Maybe they were trespassing and didn't want to get caught. You scared them off. I wanted to believe that. Really did. But it didn't explain the vanishing. The silence. The lack of any trace. The next weekend, my cousin joined me. He's the kind of guy who laughs at ghost stories and mocks Bigfoot sightings like they're tabloid trash. Perfect hunting partner for someone who needed grounding in reality. We chose separate spots but stayed within shouting range. Sure enough, an hour in, I saw her again. Same red coat. Same dreamlike walk. Gliding slowly between trees. I waved to my cousin, pointing. He saw her too. I saw his eyes go wide. We circled in from both sides, converging on the spot like a tactical maneuver. But when we reached it, again, nothing. She was gone. No footprints. No sound. Just that same feeling in the air, like we just missed something important. My cousin actually laughed. Maybe she is a ghost, he said, shaking his head. But his eyes weren't smiling. That's when we started hearing whispers. Local stories. Others who'd caught fleeting glimpses of a girl wandering through the trees, vanishing before they could speak. Some thought it was just woods trickery. Others said she matched the description of a woman who went missing near one of the old trailheads decades ago, never found. No trace. One morning, not long after, I saw her clearly. I was walking a narrow trail to one of my hunting spots. Frost clung to the fallen leaves, and my breath fogged in the early cold. That's when she appeared. 50 feet ahead. Just there, no sound, no warning. A girl, early 20s maybe. Too lightly dressed for the cold. Bright red jacket, pale face, blank expression. Her arms hung loose at her sides. Her eyes looked past me, like she wasn't seeing the forest at all. I called out gently. Are you okay? No response. She didn't flinch. Didn't blink. She just turned. Slowly. Almost too slowly. Then she stepped behind a wide oak tree and vanished. I rushed forward, adrenaline firing, boots crunching leaves. I reached the tree within seconds. But she was gone. No place to hide. No path she could have taken. Just the wind moving through empty branches. That shook me. This time, I should have seen her. Should have heard her. Should have found her. But there was nothing. After that, I stopped hunting that side of the woods alone. Not because I felt threatened, she never gave off that feeling, but because I couldn't take the not knowing anymore. I wonder if that really was the missing girl they talked about. If something happened to her out there, something violent or cruel. And if maybe she's still trying to find her way back. I don't know what the truth is. But I do know this world is a strange one. And some things in the woods don't want to be found.